Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you are not. I am EDJ and we're going to be looking at another video from HistoryMarche, and this one is called The Battle of Ain Jalut? Ain Jalut? Angelut? Again, this seems we're in the part of the world where I'm really gonna mispronounce every name and every place. So this is subtitled The Battle That Saved Islam and Stopped the Mongols. So I don't really have much knowledge, to be honest. I obviously do know of the Mongol Empire and how rapidly it expanded. Like the Mongols kind of blew up, and they had, I believe, the largest interconnected land mass empire, so they definitely were no joke. And it's gonna be interesting seeing in how they were apparently stopped in, I'm guessing this is gonna take place around the Middle East, or it has to be around there, right? I could be wrong, but I'm really looking forward to just seeing about this battle. This video was recommended to me, and it's about time I finally got to it. So I don't really have much else to say other than we should probably get right to it, eh? Let's watch the Battle of Ain Jalut by HistoryMarche.
In the 13th century, a new power emerged on the Mongolian steppe, led by Genghis Khan, who mobilized his people for war and conquest. He carved out a vast empire, and upon his death in 1227, his descendants carried on his mission to conquer the world, leaving a permanent mark on history, one characterized by slaughter, destruction, and savagery. Forays into Europe reached all the way.
I'm telling you, just look at all that. Like, it's insane. Look at how huge that empire is, man. Yeah, I'm really looking forward, because in the future I plan on covering the Mongol battles from kings and generals and their rise and whatnot, so that's gonna be something I'm gonna look very much forward to in the future, and you can all as well.
Into Poland, Hungary, and the Balkans, while the advance into the Middle East brought the Muslim communities to the brink of extinction. Now, the Mamluk Sultanate stands as the last bastion of Islam against a feared Mongol horde. The battle that will change the course of history is about to take place. But first, in Egypt, the Mamluks were a warrior caste of slave origin, trained from a young age as warriors that were very capable in battle, forming a military elite of Ayyubid sultans of Egypt and Syria. Over time their power grew, and by 1250 they overthrew the Ayyubids and formed the Mamluk Sultanate. 10 years on, as the hot summer of 1260 rolled on, Cairo was the glistening jewel on the banks of the River Nile. The city's inhabitants went about their daily routines, unaware that, in the palace, 4 Mongol envoys had the full attention of Sultan Saif al-Din Qutuz and his generals. They arrived on behalf of Hulagu Khan, carrying a letter that contained an unequivocal ultimatum. In short, the Khan threatened with terrible destruction, vowing to shatter all mosques and kill all Muslim children if Qutuz refused to submit to Mongol rule.
I ought to read this. Okay, so let's see. From the King of Kings of the East and West, the Great Khan, to Qutuz the Mamluk, who fled to escape our swords, you should think of what happened to other countries and submit to us. You have heard how we have conquered a vast empire and have purified the earth of the disorders that tainted it. We have conquered vast areas, massacring all the people. You cannot escape from the terror of our armies. Where can you flee? What road will you use to escape us? Our horses are swift, our arrows sharp, our swords like thunderbolts. Our hearts as hard as the mountains, our soldiers as numerous as the sand. Fortresses will not detain us, nor army stop us. Your prayers to God will not avail against us. We are not moved by tears, nor touched by lamentations. Only those who beg our protection will be safe. Hasten your reply before the first war is kindled. Resist and you will suffer the most terrible catastrophes. We will shatter your mosque and reveal the weakness of your God, and then we'll kill your children and your old men together. At present, you are the only enemy against whom we have to march. Holy crap.
For a time, the Sultan and the envoys looked at each other in silence. Then, Kutuz withdrew to consult with his generals, while the Mongols confidently smirked. The hastily gathered council of war was a grim affair, as the high-ranking officers reminded Kutuz of the sobering Mongol advance into the Middle East. Over the past 35 years, the unrelenting advance of the Mongols brought destruction to the Islamic world. Countless cities were leveled, their populations killed or enslaved. Finally, the great Khan monk, grandson of Genghis Khan, gave his brother Hulegu command of what could have been the largest single army ever assembled by the Mongols, ordering him to conquer the remaining Islamic countries of the Middle East and North Africa. In 1258, they marched on Baghdad with 15 tumans, equal to 150,000 troops. The Abbasid Caliphate, although no longer the center of political power in the Islamic world, was still its intellectual heartland. In February, the Mongols took advantage of the treachery in the Abbasid court, as well as Caliph's own foolishness, and cunningly captured Baghdad, a city of 1 million inhabitants, effectively putting an end to the once glorious Abbasid Empire. Hundreds of thousands of people were put to the sword or sold into slavery.
Holy crap, those numbers. 200 to 800,000. Holy crap.
The city sacked and burned to its foundations. The Grand Library of Baghdad set on fire. The ancient irrigation systems destroyed, with the devastation so extensive that agriculture took centuries to fully recover. For those of you who want to learn more about the Abbasid Caliphate, one of the greatest empires in history, an old friend, History Time, has just released a great video that covers the rise and fall of the Abbasid Caliphate in great detail.
Yeah, we learned a bit about it from Epic History, though, so we have covered the Caliphate, you know?
Including the fall of Baghdad in 1258. The link to his video is in the description. Make sure to check it out after you finish watching this video. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click that bell button. A year later, as the aftershocks of the fall of Baghdad were still felt through the Islamic world, Hulagu moved into Syria with a detachment of 6 tumans, equal to 60,000 troops. The speed of the Mongol advance was frightening. By January 1260, the Mongols were at the gates of Aleppo. The walls were breached after 6 days with the help of catapults and mangonels. As they stormed the city, the Mongols were joined by their vassal Armenian and Frankish forces, killing all Muslim and Jewish men in the ensuing massacre, while most women and children were sent to the slave markets. Christian king of Cilician Armenia and the prince of Antioch and Tripoli were handsomely rewarded for their cooperation in the sacking.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see Western Europe, or like just, you know, Europe hanging out with the Mongols and teaming up. That's insane. I had heard, obviously, the Mongols trying to get into Europe, but I always heard that they were repelled, you know? But it's interesting to see this dynamic that apparently some Europeans were just straight up working with them like this. Wow. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to the Mongol series we'll be covering by Kings and Generals, like I said, I will be looking at. So I'm really looking forward to just seeing all about this very great empire. I think the aspect that catches my eye about them is how quickly they expanded. From the time of Genghis Khan and onward, the Mongols just blew up, like, in the world stage, becoming almost like this main thing that everyone else was, like, looking at and kind of a bit afraid of or needing to challenge, you know? They really became, like, such a force to be reckoned with in such a short amount of time, which is just astounding, you know?
King of the city. After hearing of the horrific fate that Aleppo suffered, the rest of Syria capitulated by late March. With the destruction of major Muslim cities, the Mamluk Sultanate was now left as the last true stronghold of Islam. And for the Mongols, Egypt was the next target. Back in Cairo, Mamluk commanders agreed that it would be wise to capitulate to Mongol demands. Qutuz's opinion differed. Although he admitted that the Mamluks faced impossible odds against the vast Mongol army, he was a proud and strong-willed leader. To submit would be an act of cowardice. "Egypt needs a warrior as its king," he exclaimed. "If no one else will come, I will go and fight the Tatars alone." And with that, the Sultan ordered the envoys seized, cut in half at the waist, then decapitated, and their heads displayed on Cairo's imposing Zuwilla Gate.
For whatever it's worth, the man ain't a coward. Like, heck, he's going for it, which I admire. I'm gonna assume that from the title of the video, the Mamluks win. I'm guessing, just from looking at the title, but I kind of wish he hadn't spoiled that. I mean, that's if it happens, but if it is, I wish he hadn't spoiled that, because, like, I'm pretty sure my tune would be like, whoa, what a fool, but I'm like, what a brave guy, you know, instead. I think it would have been interesting if I hadn't known, you know. I've been, like, on the edge of my seat more, like, oh, this man's going against all the odds, how could he ever overcome, you know? Qutuz definitely is. I can't wait to see what he's all. I wonder if he can, like, you know, he can bark the bark, but can he walk the walk? I butchered that. Either way, let's see.
Qutuz's message to Hulagu was irrevocable. The Mamluks will not bow to the invader. The killing of envoys enraged the Khan, and the preparations for a full-scale war began at once. Qutuz had a difficult task ahead of him. He was vastly outnumbered. The Mamluk Sultanate was divided into 24 districts, each charged with supplying 1,000 troops, which placed the total number of Mamluk cavalry at 24,000, of which 4,000 were royal Mamluks, 10,000 were Emir's Mamluks, and 10,000 were more regular troops of various origins. Meanwhile, Hulagu had 60,000 troops across Syria. Nevertheless, Qutuz began defensive preparations. Perhaps most importantly, he could call upon his rival Baibars, one of the best military commanders of his time, to join him, promising to give control of Aleppo to him after the war. Baibars was of Turkic origin, either a Kipchak or a Cuman. He was part of the Bali tribe that lived north of the Black Sea, and, while still a boy, he was enslaved by the Mongols during their invasion of Europe, and eventually sold to the Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt and Syria. In Cairo, he was educated in accordance with the Mamluk Furasiyu code. He underwent years of extensive military training and received an excellent education. Even at a young age, Baibars displayed exceptional military prowess, and upon completing his training, he was appointed as commander of an elite group of Sultan's personal bodyguards. He distinguished...
Wow, I'm speed reading all this. What a life already he has, and so much experience. Like, this guy, I'm just reading all his stats right here. I'm like, yeah, this guy has to be instrumental, right? And in securing a victory over the Mongols.
distinguished himself in battle during the Seventh Crusade and, alongside Qutuz himself, was one of the commanders who destroyed the Crusader army at the Battle of Al-Mansoura in 1250, where King Louis IX himself was captured. After the fall of Damascus in 1260, Baibars was invited by Sultan Qutuz to lead the elite Mamluk vanguard against the Mongols. As defensive preparations in Egypt continued, word reached Qutuz that Hulagu postponed the campaign against...
Another thing about it, so many freaking last stands have happened in Egypt. Like, it makes sense. Egypt is one of the oldest, civilizations in the world. So much has happened. And so many last stands from the Bronze Age to the end of the Hellenistic era. So much has happened in Egypt, and so many final last stands. Like, it's actually really insane. Just the rich history of this region.
Egypt, and withdrew most of his troops east. The death of the great Khan monk prompted Hulagu to return to Karakorum for the election of the new great Khan. Hulagu left his trusted lieutenant Kitbuka in charge of defending Syria until he returned to continue the campaign against Egypt. Kitbuka, who was now governor of Aleppo, was given command of one Tumen of 10,000 troops. Additional 2,000 troops of Cilician Armenians, Georgians, the garrison from Aleppo, as well as locally recruited nomads were added to Kitbuka's command, increasing his total force to around 12,000. Hulagu correctly estimated that Palestine could not sustain an army larger than 15,000 for a prolonged period of time. Furthermore, intelligence gathered from captive and allied soldiers suggested that the Mamluks would be able to field no more than 15,000 troops in Palestine. And indeed, for the offensive, Qutuz prepared 14,000 of his best Mamluks, including Bedouins, Turkoman Mamluks, Mongolian deserters, and members of the Hawara tribe of Libya, assigning 10,000 troops to stay behind and guard Egypt against a possible Christian invasion. Baibars left Cairo first, in late July, commanding the large vanguard contingent, force marching to secure Gaza. Both Qutuz and Baibars saw the departure of Hulagu's main army as an opportunity to attack the Mongol rearguard. Qutuz sent urgent letters to Latin crusaders, asking them to join him. However, the crusaders, fearing excommunication as well as Mongol reprisals, opted for the middle ground by giving the Mamluk army safe passage and allowing them to purchase supplies as they passed through Christian territory. Once news reached Kitbuka of the approaching enemy, he marched out to meet the Islamic army. Having received reports that Qutuz will pass through Christian territory, he planned to intercept the Sultan. Meanwhile, Qutuz reached Acre and camped outside the city to purchase provisions for his troops. Mongol spies reported the size and position of the Mamluk army, and Kitbuka hastened his march, hoping to surprise the Muslims. The Mongols marched along the eastern side of Lake Tiberias. Once they passed the lake, they crossed the River Jordan and proceeded west towards the Spring of Goliath, where, according to legend, David slew Goliath. Mongols force marched in two columns, wanting to intercept and surprise the Mamluks. Cilician, Armenian and Frankish troops were placed in the vanguard because they knew the terrain and could guide the rest of the army. The Jezreel Valley was surrounded by Mount Gilboa in the south and the hills of Galilee to the north. As the Mongol army crossed the River Jordan, they were surprised by Baibars' contingent. Sudden volleys of Mamluk.
They moved so quick because they wanted to get the element of surprise, but the Mamluks, it seems, must have caught wind or something because they prepared this attack. Wow. I wonder if he's gonna explain how.
Mamluk arrows opened the engagement. The Christian heavy cavalry moved to close the distance. Baibars caught the Mongols off guard. Just like the Crusaders leading the enemy's vanguard, he too knew the lay of the land, and he moved his troops into position to launch a surprise attack, while skillfully avoiding detection by Mongol scouts. Cilician armored cavalry made contact with the Muslim line, instantly breaking up their formation. A seemingly chaotic skirmish erupted as the Mamluks were being pushed back. Further back, Kitbuka's line of sight was blocked by the gentle ridge running north-south, where fighting was taking place, and, not being able to see how many Mamluk troops are deployed beyond the ridge, he sent more troops to bolster the Christian charge, and ordered the rest of his troops to form the battle lines. With Baibar's exceptional leadership, the Mamluk vanguard is able to maintain discipline during a series of maneuvers, rotating between intense brief hand-to-hand clashes, followed by short retreats and arrow volleys, thus managing to hold back the entire Mongol army with a significantly smaller force.
Again, Baibars is the one who impressed me. After breaking down his stats, I did read it. Like, man, the man seems like he has to be instrumental in order to defeat the Mongols, and it's cool to see now that in practice that thought I'm having is, for the most part, well supported, because, yeah, again, it takes a lot of discipline to lead your troops to kind of do this, you know, maintain discipline in the face of a numerically superior army, I'd suppose. You know, refraining from breaking, fighting back, and retreating and fighting back, like, that's a lot of discipline and action right there in the heat of the moment. And again, his leadership, as he said, is exceptional. And you're seeing, definitely I'm seeing that in practice, which amazes me, because he's with a numerically inferior force doing this. He also chose the terrain beautifully. He wasn't caught off guard. He basically undid the Mongols' plan, so he wasn't caught off guard, and he used his own knowledge of the terrain for this hill, covering his forces, and yeah, again, like, very intelligent man.
While gradually giving ground to the enemy. Despite taking considerable losses, the Mamluk commander kept his line stable as he rounded the mountain slopes, maintaining a fighting retreat under increasing Mongol pressure. Baibar's troops have reportedly used...
Again, fighting retreats are also just very impressive, once executed very well, you know, and he seems to be doing that incredibly well. So again, like, I'm impressed by him so far.
Early forms of handguns to shoot at the enemy. These weapons, while very inaccurate, were very effective at scaring Mongol horses, thereby disrupting and slowing their advance, with some animals galloping off the field in panic with their riders. After hours of holding back the overwhelming Mongol advance, tiredness set in and Baibar's contingent began taking heavy losses. But by now it became clear that his force was only a part of the Mamluk army. From the surrounding hills, hidden in the trees, Kutuz watched and waited for the enemy to come.
An ambush? I'm assuming by the circles hidden in between these trees that this is supposed to be a luring thing, and then once Baibars gets them close enough here, they're just gonna come from all sides. That's what I'm guessing they're going for? If so, very genius.
To him. Seeing the Mongols pushing Baibar's back, Kutuz bolstered the morale of his troops with a rousing speech, which historians say elicited tears from the eyes of his soldiers, and he reminded them of the Mongol savagery, saying, "There is no alternative to fighting, except a horrible death for all of you, your wives, and your children." Kitbuka ordered an all-out charge, aiming to finish off Baibar's vanguard before they could rejoin the main Mamluk force. Kutuz countered by ordering his right flank to charge out of the tree line into the Mongol left. Recognizing that he is surrounded on 3 sides, Kitbuka ordered his troops to charge, shoot and break away in an attempt to lure the Mamluks into giving chase. But Baibars and Kutuz recognized the feigned retreat ruse. They ordered the men to hold their ground and shoot their arrows at the enemy from where they stood. Aware that Mamluk bows and arrows are much deadlier at longer range, and seeing that the feigned retreat didn't work, Kitbuka quickly adapted. He ordered the bulk of his cavalry to swing across the valley and charge the Mamluk left flank, while instructing the rest of his troops to close ranks and hold against the Mamluk center and right flank. His plan was to use the gentle slope to mount a mass charge that will smash the Mamluk left flank and encircle their army. As Kutuz's left flank...
I'll say, I originally thought that Kutuz wanted to lure them in here and then they would just completely close on all sides. But Kitbuka quickly recognized this and then attempted a feign retreat, but the Muslims held... the Mamluks held firm in their positions, and so Kitbuka, instead of moving away, decides to just go all in with a battle, closing the gap, and now he's relying heavily on his cavalry winning and crushing the Mamluk left in order for this encircle. There's a lot of maneuvering going on right here. That's what I like. Like, first it was a trap. Kitbuka noticed that, and then he tried to trap them by luring them. They didn't fall for it, and so now he adapted and is now going for an envelopment. Again, like in the heat of the moment, like they're thinking on their toes, you know. So much is happening, you know, and I really like that. Like, again, like obviously we're watching the video, but it's like you gotta think at the heat of the moment when you're in the heat of the moment, like in the middle of all this, thinking, what are we gonna do? The maneuvering, it really is just like a game of chess, you know? And again, the Mongols are very skilled. We know their armies are powerful. But the thing is, the Mamluks have morale. They know that they need to win, and there's kind of a desperation in their fighting. And as we know, sometimes that can make an army even more effective, because it's like at this point it's all or nothing, you know? So, yeah.
Met the Mongol charge, they were in trouble almost straight away. By overloading the flank, the Mongols pushed back the Muslim line. Seeing that his left flank is in danger of collapsing, Kutuz ordered a detachment of troops to follow him, and he rushed to reinforce his troops. In the center, Baibars consolidated his lines after his fighting retreat and began pushing back the Christian heavy cavalry. The fighting was bloody.
Again, just all the dimensions happening at once in this battle. Like I just mentioned about the whole them trying to trick each other, trap each other, but now it's like here you have this moment of the Mamluk left is being pushed back, while the Mongol center, under the brilliant leadership of Baibars, is now being pushed. And so now it's like, who's gonna break first, you know? Kutuz is moving here, and I'm assuming he can help make the difference on his left, but Kitbuka, now what will he do to counter Kutuz? Is he gonna reinforce more his right here, or is he gonna push back against Baibars? Because he seems to have a contingent in the center that he has not mobilized. So, like, I'm wondering what Kitbuka could do, and if he doesn't focus on Baibars off the bat, Baibars might just be able to actually just pull off a win here. But maybe Kutuz, with his chosen contingent, could actually help stop the advancing, his left from breaking, from the Mongols advancing right. So now it's like Kitbuka, could he even really win if he chooses one side or another? It seems like, man, he's gonna make that decision, I'm assuming, unless he doesn't commit to either side and just remains here with his reserved. I don't know, like, it seems like Kitbuka's gonna have to make a pretty big decision.
in the center as the mounted Mamluk and Crusader troops locked in bitter hand-to-hand combat. Baibars personally led his contingent from the front, urging his men to defend their country against the invader. Meanwhile, Mamluk's left flank was in dire straits. Sections of the line faltered under the weight of the Mongol attack, and some troops began fleeing. As the Mamluk left flank began collapsing, the Mongols pressed forward, seeing their chance to rout and envelop the enemy. Galloping up the hill, Kutuz urged his men to stand and fight as he rushed to shore up the ranks. He took off his helmet so that his soldiers could recognize him. "O Islam!" he shouted 3 times, and charged into the enemy line with his personal retinue. This act of courage invigorated the troops, who rallied to his banner. After another hour of fighting, the Mongol push slowed as the Sultan managed to stabilize the flank. Kitbuka now found himself in a dangerous situation. When his attempt to overrun the Mamluk left stalled, his own position became exposed after he sent his last reserves to try and stop Baibar's attack in the...
That's what I was saying. Like, I was wondering, because it seemed like what I was talking about a bit ago, like, Kutuz could easily, not easily, but, you know, help stabilize the left, which is a huge part in Kitbuka's plan of winning. Like, that's his goal. But at the same time, Baibars is pushing the center back, so he had to use his reserves to, I assume, help one side. If he goes to the left and helps manages to push Kutuz, maybe that would be good, but at the same time, Baibars could have easily broken the center, and then what? You know, and now it's like this. It's like he's putting his reserves to stop Baibars, but what if Kutuz now, Kutuz stops his advancing right, stabilizing his left, and then basically his trump card that Kitbuka wanted, which was the envelopment, is now stopped at all. Is now completely stopped. So it's like he was stuck in a situation. I felt like he could, whichever side he chose, he would be left without like a way to actually like win, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah, this was like a really bad situation he's in.
The center. Seeing that the Mongols have committed all of their troops, Baibars sent urgent messages to the right flank, ordering them to push the Mongols at all cost, seeing his chance to encircle them from the right. Meanwhile, more troops reinforced the Mamluk left flank, and Kutuz at last managed to turn the tide. Less suited to hand-to-hand combat, the Mongols could not withstand the determined Muslim cavalry, and, despite their numerical advantage, they began falling back. Kitbuka's other flank also began collapsing inward, and now the danger was real that his position...
Wow, and look, it's like the original plan when they had them enveloped, when Kutuz was hidden here and Baibars led them here, it was stopped originally because Kitbuka recognized this and wanted to try to draw them out through a feigned retreat. But now it seems like through just sheer battle, he's about to be put in the exact same position he was originally in, as Kutuz keeps pushing it in, closing them in, essentially enveloping, circling them, the Mongols. Wow.
Position would soon be completely surrounded. One of his officers suggested to him to retreat, but Kitbuka replied, "We must die here, and that is the end of it. Long life and happiness to the Khan." And with those words, he too joined the fighting. Bolstered by the presence of their commander, the resolve of the Mongol troops hardened. But as the Mamluks encircled the invader...
Wow, and completely got them, like, almost completing the trap. This is like freaking Kanai.
Kitbuka was captured by Baibar's troops amidst the fighting. By now, the Mongols were tactically outmatched on the field, and seeing their leader fall into enemy hands, they realized that the battle was lost. The rest of Kutbuka's troops began breaking out and retreated towards Besan. On that day, the Muslim army achieved a great victory at Ain Jalut. By halting the westward Mongol expansion and thus saving the three holiest cities, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem, from destruction, Qutuz became the savior of Islam, and, arguably, he saved his Christian enemies in the west from the Devil's Horsemen, a name attributed to the Mongols. For had they managed to conquer Egypt, the way across northern Africa, all the way to the Strait of Gibraltar, would have been open. In theory, this would have enabled the Mongols to form a ring around Europe and invade on multiple fronts, making it difficult for any European army to be positioned in order to hold them back.
Wow.
But Qutuz, who became known as the Lion of Ain Jalut.
So basically he's saying that Qutuz probably helped Europe, even if indirectly through his victory. That's insane.
Did not get to enjoy this triumph. He was assassinated a few days after the battle, while the army was returning to Cairo. Having been loyal to the Aibak faction, Qutuz certainly had a few enemies and rivals.
Rip Qutuz, man. The man was a real go-getter. At least he went out with a great victory, you know?
Baibars, a member of the Bari faction, was the most powerful of his rivals, and it is possible that he was responsible for Qutuz's death as retaliation, because the late Sultan refused to give control of Aleppo to Baibars, as he had promised.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that happening. They were rivals, and he didn't fulfill his promise. Baibars seems like the most logical candidate, right?
Fearing Baibars' power and ambition. Upon the army's triumphant return to Cairo, he became the new Mamluk Sultan. Sultan Baibars was an equally capable ruler as Qutuz, continuing the strong Mamluk traditions. Irrespective of their political rivalry, Qutuz and Baibars were men whose deeds on the battlefield at Ain Jalut preserved Islam from destruction. Credit goes to our awesome patrons who make videos like this one possible. Consider joining them.
Baibars became known as the father of conquest for his reconquest of Crusader strongholds from 1260 until his death in 1277, a conflict which culminated with the destruction of Acre in 1291. Wow. Baibars effectively administered the country, building message relay system, bridges, irrigation and shipping canals, harbors, mosques, etc. He was also a patron of Islamic science and was famous for building a cat garden in Cairo, providing shelter and food to all of the city's cats. Oh, that's kind of sweet.
To support our work. You can also support us by videos are released.
Well guys, that was a great video. This was really cool. I'm gonna end the video here. I'll see you guys tomorrow when we start something new. Bye everyone.